On this side, you can have access to the brew group. In order to remove the brew group, you have two different sizes of the screws. One will be a T15 and the other one is a T10. If you use that, you can easily remove the brew group. This brew group resembles in removal and reinstallation the same type like it is in the E9 and other E and F and C9 models. Now coming to the other side, as the right side of the machine side panel has been removed, you can see all the parts here. I will just briefly point out what is what. This is the tubular boiler or the thermoblock as Jura calls it. Seiko calls it a tubular boiler. And on top of this is a clamped piece which is an electronic sensor. This has a limit of 192 degrees Celsius. Now that limit is really the top. If the machine or the boiler overheats beyond that, then the thermofuse will trip and disconnect all power to the machine. So if there is no power, suddenly you lost the power to the machine, then you should immediately think about this part that has blown and it is disconnected the power. Now there is another sensor which monitors the temperature of the boiler. This is the sensor that initially allows the temperature to build up to a certain limit, which is in the making of espresso, the hot water should be at a maximum temperature of 200 degrees Fahrenheit or maybe 80 degrees Celsius. I'm not very sure about the conversion, but you can do your maths. It's a 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Even if it is 195 degrees Fahrenheit and it shuts off the heating of water, then that's okay, because by the time the espresso comes out, the temperature will further drop to about 185. So you know the temperature of espresso in the cup is 185. That means the boiler is still heating up to 195 or 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is the sensor which also causes the initial warm-up delays. There will be a blinking light and or you will say sensor error 4. Now that is the sensor error 4. This is not working, so you have to think about replacing this sensor. This bracket is holding the boiler, supporting the boiler bracket, and also it is supporting the solenoid valve, which is a two-way solenoid valve that allows the passage for water to go to the steam hot water outlet and the steam outlet. When you turn the knob open, this valve is energized, the solenoid valve, and it opens the passage of water. The next item here is, of course, obviously this pump. We carry a lot of Invensys pumps to be sold. The next part beyond that is the next part here is clamped as encoder, and it is closely attached to the brew drive mechanism or the brew drive motor. So this piece very rarely goes bad. I have not seen many, and some customers who insisted and they wanted to change it, nothing happened, nothing changed. So I still believe that this is a very simple but very effective part that does not go bad. The function of this encoder is to move the brew group into different positions, from the home position to the brewing position, and then discarding position of the used coffee, and then going back to the home position. When the brew group does not go back to the home position, it will display, this encoder will display the sign error 8. And that's what it means, that the brew group has not been able to go back to the start position. So the race doesn't start until it goes back to the starting position. So you have to worry about it, because perhaps there have been some sprinkle of coffee grounds lying around, or there has been some calcium buildup or some leakage that has made coffee grounds to be solid and not allow the brew group to go back to the bottom position. One of the tricks that Jura will recommend, service center, they will recommend that you should remove the drip trays out, insert your hand in the bottom and try to clean the bottom of the brew group. If that helps, that is wonderful. But when that does not help and the sign error code is persistent, then you have to open the machine and access the brew group, remove it, clean it, sanitize it, and replace it. That's my recommendation. Anyway, the next item here is the flow meter. which is a very significant part in measuring the dose as you adjust it for the coffee. The flow of water through this flow meter is monitored by some impulses sent to the electronic board. For example, I can just use a number. 100 impulses sent to the electronic board will assess about 1 ounce, say, for example. So obviously, if you have adjusted the coffee to 3 ounces, then it will have 300 impulses sent to the board, and then the board will say, okay, enough, the dose has been reached, stop monitoring the flow. But when it is dispensing the hot water, you don't have the function of flow meter, but it will still, the water will still pass through it. Now, when the water flow is blocked because the calcium deposits or something, then the water inlet here can easily be blocked because the water inlet on the flow meter is very narrow. Even a small speck of ground coffee can block that. So when there is no water flowing, or the espresso flow is less, or there is an error that you are not getting the required quantity of espresso in the cup, this is one of those parts that you have to think of. Here you have on the right the grinder motor, which is visible. Above this is the grinding mechanism with the conical burrs. Conical burrs, again, I have to give my opinion here. They are the best. The flat burr grinder, they are useless compared to the conical burr grinders. And if you are looking for any espresso machine that you want to buy, make sure that you are looking for the conical burr grinders in the machine. The axis of beans, of course, is from the top, and it feeds into the grinder, conical burr grinders. The advantage of conical burr grinders is that the conical piece fits inside the upper burr, and the adjustment of the fineness that you do is based on the aperture around that will allow the ground coffee to go through. So once you have adjusted that aperture in a circle, then coffee cannot go through until it is ground to that size of fineness. And that is the advantage, that this grinder with the conical burr burrs, this grinder with the conical burrs will not allow coffee to be uneven. It will grind it to the size that it has to pass through that aperture. So this for the grinding mechanism. Here you have the adjustment knob for the fineness. You can turn it to the left for increasing the fineness, meaning that it will be coarser, and you want to make it finer, then you turn it to the right. But the thing is, this knob itself is a relative position to tell you how you are adjusting the grind fineness. But it is not a landmark that if you have put it in the center, it is a certain fineness. You cannot calibrate that way. The best way to calibrate, you make a change by 1 notch at a time and feel the used coffee that drops into the used coffee bin. And that is where you can find out how fine it is. And my recommendation, it should be always like the grind fineness of table salt grain as you sprinkle on your food. That works the best, and do not try to make it finer grind than that. Now the pump, as I mentioned, this is a pump here. It does its job very nicely. The front of the pump is connected with a diaphragm regulator. This diaphragm regulator regulates the pressure of how much the pump is pumping out. So usually it will restrict that pressure to 15 bars. And it is controlled by a diaphragm, which, if the machine is not maintained or descaled properly, then that diaphragm, or even after a number of years of usage, that diaphragm becomes very firm or not as flexible as it used to be in the beginning. So it will cause that problem. And when that diaphragm is not the normal flexible type, then there will be too much pressure coming out on the outlet, and the O-ring will start leaking. So this is a very common leakage source or spot. If there is a water leaking under the machine and collecting on the countertop, you should think about this part first. And this is not really difficult to remove, but here in this particular model, the connection here is with a hairpin lock. And that means you have to order the membrane regulator with hairpin connection for the Teflon tube. I will now remove this bracket to show you some of the parts behind it. I'm using a T15 torque screw here for these screws. There are two of them. The bottom one is a smaller size, which takes a T10 size torque screw bit. This is actually fastening the solenoid valve, the two-way solenoid valve that is for hot water and steam passage. This is a smaller screw, and I'm removing this. This bracket is out now. There are more parts visible behind it. This is the solenoid valve two-way that I talked about. This solenoid valve allows the water from the boiler to go through it. When the solenoid valve will open the passage, and it will go to the outlet for steam in hot water. This is a critical part because when it is there, it has to be clean, and sometimes when the machine is not properly descaled, it will clog the passage and block the steam. It will be slow, or it will be no steam, or it will be hot water very slow, whatever the thing. Now, critical on this design is this tube. This is not a simple tube like the others. It is specially molded to the size like a question mark. This is very special, and if it is leaking here, then you can only use this kind of question mark shaped PTFE tube. Now, the important thing here, the reason why I took the bracket out, is to show you this clamp style here. This is a very different, I have not seen in any other machines, but it is here, so I will show you how to remove it. There is a clamp on the top to keep that piece from the top and bottom hold firmly. So I slide this out. This is a flexible clamp, and that comes off. And this piece below is so difficult to look at. How do you remove it? It's very simple. You just need to slide it towards the bottom by pressing it from the top, and it slides down. There is a little clamp here that will make it a little uneasy, but it slides down. Here it is. Looks very complicated, but it's very simple to remove it if you know how to do it. Now, these two tubes then are freed, and you can pull them out, and there is an O-ring inside that will seal these tubes. In one of them, the O-ring has a washer. Don't lose that, because that washer may be necessary to keep the O-ring tight and seal it properly. So I'm just pushing it back. And the other one is also the O-ring here. This one is without the washer, so you can replace it back after changing the O-ring. These are the ones that can leak. And this is a double two-way, or actually three-way, connected to the boiler. And this is allowing the water to come out from here. So these are the sources where the hot water is coming out. So the O-rings here can wear, or they can become harder and not be good seals anymore. So the water can trickle from here. Now you know the trick how to remove the bracket that is locking them in, and you can replace the O-rings and fix the leakage. As easy as that. Easy for me to say. Okay, I'm just going to replace this back. This piece, the metal piece here, chromed, this is not available. If this is damaged because you tried to unthread it from here in a very rough manner, then you cannot replace this. We will try to see if there are some newer model plastic parts available. In case this piece has been damaged, the only recourse will be to change the complete thermoblock so that the new thermoblock will come with the plastic connectors outlets, and that's the rescue. But it will be a little expensive to order a new thermoblock. This thermoblock is with 1400 watt capacity of heating, and it's 120 volt. It could be 220 volt or 230 volt, and the wattage will still be the same. If any of the C1500 owners are trying to repair this and they find any details that are different, please be kind to let us know so that we can correct our video for other customers who are watching it. Now I've just slide this up so that the Teflon tubes are sealed. They will not come out, but in order to prevent this from sliding down, you have to have this clamp in place. That's done. The outlet of water from the boiler goes through another valve here, which builds the pressure before it reaches the brew group. And in order to go through to the brew group, it enters from the drainage valve below, through to the coffee, up on the top of the brew group, and then dispense the coffee. But in order to have that access, there is a solenoid magnet valve, as they call it. This magnet valve, when the espresso button is selected, this magnet valve will be energized, and there is a pin plunger in the front towards the brew group that will push forward and open the inlet for the brew group so that the espresso water will go from there and make espresso. As long as this valve is good and opening the inlet of water to the brew group so that the water can pass through the coffee, your espresso will be made. But then when this one is not opened, that means this valve, the water coming out from here, will not be able to go through this valve to the brew group, but it will otherwise pass through this, and you will see that either hot water will come out from this hot water dispenser, or it will dispense into the steam passage out, one of the two, because this is controlling the outlet for steam and hot water. Now, in certain conditions, when you see that you are not able to make espresso even though you are selecting the espresso button, that means this magnet valve is not opening. Now, where do you think the water will go? The only other outlet here is the passage through the solenoid valve, two-way solenoid valve out through the dispensing, hot water dispensing tube. Now, if this tube is also closed, because espresso is not coming out and the water is not able to get out from the steam hot water tube, that means the pump is still working, and that pressure will transfer on to the membrane regulator, and the membrane regulator will have no other option but to put the pressure on the outlet here, and it will start leaking. This is one of the other reasons why a membrane regulator will be leaking, because the pressure built by the pump has nowhere to go. So it is better that you do not try and wait until espresso comes out. If in the first 5 seconds the espresso is not coming out from the spout, then you should turn the switch off to stop the pump from working anymore. Otherwise, you are risking the life of the membrane regulator. When you are replacing this bracket back on, you have to make sure that you are positioning this solenoid valve properly into the notch here, the housing for that particular piece, so that the two holes here for the screws to fasten the support for the solenoid valve be easy to fasten it and hold it firmly, because if it is not firm, then it will start rattling and make noise. So that's just one point to make note of. To recap this video now, I will again suggest that we are here to repair the machines only when the owners cannot do it. And because our source of parts is not from Jura directly, so it is a little more expense for us to obtain the parts, and still we have tried to keep the cost as low as possible. So check with us or send us an email. We will reply to you specifically for every model how much is our charges and the shipping costs that you'll have to add on to. We encourage everybody to do the repairs first if you are having some skills and have the tools. And as I said in the beginning, the tools are not too many, but they are simple, but they will enable you to do the work. Those who have not repaired the machine before, we re-emphasize this point that please make sure you watch the videos more than once. Send us email asking any specific questions, but we cannot make you a trained specialist by just helping you over the emails. Even the display of illustrated guides that we have they will not make anybody an instant expert. You can make a try, and if you are successful, we are happy for you. But if you cannot, then send us the machine and we will be happy to repair it. We don't have any excuse whether the model is old, new, expensive, less expensive. If it is a Jura fully automatic model, we will fix it. And if we cannot, then we will trade in for some equivalent model and at an adjustment of cost for your old machine. And that concludes this video really, and I appreciate your time and thank you for watching.